You are listening to Danny on What the Heck podcast. This is the place where I share my experience, knowledge and skills. Hello, thanks for tuning in to my podcast. Got a bit of an interesting one today. I've actually just published a blog, about to publish a blog on my website, and it was about my experience that I had with an article that got written about me about 10 years ago. So it inspired me to write an article, and I basically wrote to the editor of the Stuff newspaper and said, hey guys, it's been 10 years. That article that you published to me is not really factual, and it's a bit of half-truths, and let me sort of paint a picture about the background of it, so maybe you might have some compassion and remove the article, because it does actually tarnish my business anyway. So I didn't get what I want, and I'm sort of a bit disgruntled at the moment that a newspaper can have some person ring them up, tell them a bunch of half-truths, that merits them writing an article, publishing it in their newspaper, and then it being there tarnishes my business. And I've had that to put out there for 10 years, so I thought I'd see if I can do anything about getting it removed, basically, but I didn't have any joy. But my experience is worth sharing. So what I've done, put together a blog. And the blog reads, just like my headline reads, Disgusting Treatment by roeland.vandenbergh. And he's the chief business editor for the Stuff newspaper. And if you're watching this or listening to this on our podcast, Stuff is a big news reporter in New Zealand. I have heard of other people's experiences not being that good, but we're not talking about that today. So in bold, my blog says, they are a law unto themselves. Judge, jury, and executioner is the Stuff newspaper. So it was back in 2010, I had this disgruntled customer who felt justified that she would ring up my clients on a Saturday morning, about 10 or 15 of them, that was actually 15 to 20 of them or more, and I had people ring me up saying, hey, I just got this phone call from this lady, Sharon, and she's really just happy, and she's trying to badmouth you and defame you because she's not happy that you're no longer looking after her website. And I thought, oh my goodness. So she was just ringing up all my clients, going through all my database and trying to cause as much disruption in my business as possible. There was another issue going on at the time that no one really knew about, and I was going through a really messy divorce. And my wife at the time, she was into horses, and she used to buy all her horse gear from this lady, and they were quite good friends, customer versus client. And I thought, if I did a website for this lady, at least I'll get some of my money back that was going down the drain with all these horses. So it was quite good having her as client. But when I went through the divorce, my wife got in her ear and said, oh, Danny's making a lot of money out of you. So she decided not to use my services anymore. But when she left, she couldn't take what she thought was hers away with her. And that's where the problem lied. So when she discovered this, she thought that merited herself ringing up my clients and bad-mouthing me. Most of my clients, or all of them actually, we had a letter of understanding and we explained how the process worked, and they were happy with it. So anyway, I just wanted to explain what happened. As I said, I was going for a messy divorce. So it was a Saturday morning. Then after I come up with a cunning plan, which I'll explain in an email about how to stop this lady ringing up my clients, and it did work, but she went to the Stuff, and she rang up the Stuff newspaper and said, this guy's ripped off my web. I don't know what she said, but when the Stuff guy rang me up, he thought I was an awful person. And he said, you've done this and you've done this. And I said, hold on a minute. Let me send you my contract that I have, or my letter of understanding I give clients before I even start a job. And I also explained to them every facet of, if it goes wrong, this is what you have. And after talking to her for a while, he got a better picture that I weren't a bad guy, because she'd certainly been feeding him a whole lot of rubbish that wasn't true. And unfortunately, she wouldn't give up this lady. She was on a mission. So one thing I did learn about the whole being in the newspaper thing, once they start and they invest time in an article, they actually publish it no matter what you do or say. So you're doomed. So if you ever get yourself in that position, once you've got stuff on the phone, you're getting an article published about you. And that was, as I said, I was a bit dumbfounded in actually what she had actually fed them, and actually they had believed, which was quite good. So I'm really pleased that they did actually get to speak to me. So 10 years later, I look at this article. So I've been working on building my personal brand a lot lately. So if you search Danny the Heck, you'll find lots of stuff about me on the internet. And this one article was always in the top 10. And it's like a haunting. And I'm thinking, well, I don't believe the article's true. I don't think it's merited. I don't think anything. I mean, it might be factual. Yes, I did do some things, but there's two sides of the story. Most people just read the negative. They don't look at all the other sides of it. Anyway, I thought, after 10 years, I've done my time. Even if I were wrong, why do they have to keep this information on the internet? Anyway, 10 years later, I'm a lot stronger on the internet. And I can publish my own content. I can do blogs. I can do podcasts. I can do a YouTube video like I'm doing now. And also, if I put stuff on the internet, when you search Google, my stuff comes up. So not as strong as the Stuff newspaper, but I certainly can have my say, and I'm doing that now. So in a few months, have a wee search for roeland.vandenbergh's name, and you'll probably find this very article coming up with his name all the time. And I'm sort of thinking, I'm hoping, if you listen to this, Roland, my policy is, if it makes a difference to somebody's life, I'll remove the content off the internet. Your policy is you don't budge. That's fine. Now I've got your name on the internet. What a terrible attitude to be having. Anyway, before all that started, and I've got myself all wound up, I wrote a lovely letter to the Stuff newspaper. Here it goes. It says, "Hi Stuff. Subject, act of kindness to Danny the Heck. I'm asking for a favour. I've had this article written about me about 10 years ago. And it's about time, at that time I explained to them I was going through a messy divorce and my wife was out to get me. And one of her beloved friends, who she used to buy all the horse gear off, Sharon Jones from Canterbury Equestrian at the time, the information is inaccurate and certainly not fair to the character or my nature," is what I said. "For this reason, I respectfully like the information removed. Because every time you search for my name, it comes up and people read it negatively, whatever. I'm sure it's harmed my business, but after 10 years, okay. It's cost me a lot of explaining and embarrassment, which it has. And people don't really read it. They just read the title that says, the same as my title. What is it? Disgusting treatment. And disgusting treatment. And they're talking about my name. They did turn the article around to say that we changed it just to actually warn people to make sure they get their P's and Q's right when setting up their website, but it still has my name on it. And I did have a contract, and I did have it well explained, and I sat down with the lady at dinner for 3 hours and explained every facet of it, but still you get no points for doing that either, even if she thought, and it's not true. Anyway, for this reason, I want asking them to remove it. It's been 10 years. It still affects me. The information is not accurate. They say it is accurate. I say it's not accurate. It doesn't do anything but harm my reputation. Is it possible to get it removed? Gave them the link, and I said, hey, get a better picture of me. Go to theheck.com, check out my website, get a little bit of understanding about my character, and what they're saying I did isn't really in tune with my character. Check out my YouTube channel. You'll get a feel what type of person I am. And also, I've given them another link there to when I were videoed by an organisation that was talking about some good I did. What else have I got? Oh, then I wanted to explain to them that I have dyslexia. And sometimes when I'm talking, I feel like I'm speaking Japanese because people don't really communicate well with me. And being an editor, I only imagine that he probably is reading my emails thinking, oh my goodness, this guy can't spell. But it is all part of living with dyslexia. I'm continuously getting misinterpreted. And then I said, I'm not making excuses for myself. I don't need any false information holding me back. I think 10 years of poorly researched information is enough. And I'm happy to talk on the phone. Here's my phone number. So that's what I said. So then he come back to me with a message, and I can't quote what he said because of his copyright. It says, but it said basically Stuff doesn't remove content. They don't like doing it. And he wanted to know why it took so long to come back to him. I said it didn't really matter. I just thought it was about time I got rid of it. And it says if the information is inaccurate, give us some more content and we'll edit it if necessary. So I thought, okay, well, I'll give him some more content. So I wrote back and said, hello, Roland. Thanks for replying. I really appreciate it. I was quite surprised to get a reply back from the Stuff newspaper. I explained to him I did have a really good chat with the guy on the phone at the time. And I was going through a very messy divorce, and I wasn't long out of hospital, as I wasn't. So the reason why I didn't argue it then, I wasn't in really good health, it wasn't in the right frame of mind, and it just wasn't good timing. So I explained to him the part I didn't agree with is that I purchased a domain name without the lady's knowledge. That was untrue. I explained to the lady I didn't want to touch her website. I didn't want to touch her existing website domain name. I actually create a new advertising area within my existing network, and I pick a phrase, domain name, and I put it on top of it. So I explained that. I said at the time I had 150 different domain names, and I do things different. I lease the traffic to people. And I used to have domain names, 150 of them all going into New Zealand's information network. And then I used to lease out the advertising space. And that's how I used to do it back then, which was quite different. And it's still different today, actually. But so I explained that to him. And it's a good example. This is when I used to have 45 different rental car brands that I used to market. And when one of them left me, I used to send the traffic from the one that left me to my another rental car website or advertising. So it was like I owned a mall, and I used to fit out the whole aisle of the mall into rental car sites, and everyone used to come to New Zealand's information network looking for rental cars. One left, it didn't matter because I had other ones I could send that traffic to. And I did the same with equestrian products. Well, that was my goal at the time. Kind of like a billboard advertising. Just because you advertise on a billboard does not mean you own the billboard when you leave. And that was Sharon's problem. She didn't want to use my services anymore, wanted to take her business elsewhere, but wanted to take my clever stuff that I'd done away with her. And at that time, she'd only been a client of mine for about 5 or 6 months. And we actually had sold about $9,000 worth of products online, which is really, really good. A lot of the work that we do is we write articles about horses, and my wife is loving it because she loves horses, and we use all those articles and all those blogs and all those content to drive traffic to an equestrian part of our New Zealand's information network. But when the customer leaves, they don't actually own that information that we have created to drive traffic to the area where they sell their products or services. And that was what we were doing. So as I said in my article here, I recommended at the time that Sharon kept her existing website, kept her own domain name, keep it out of my network, and this would be a great way of judging how good our advertising is. And rather than putting all her eggs in one basket. But she was so excited, and we were friends, that she thought she would trust me with everything and give me the whole lot, her whole business on the platter. So when she wanted to leave, I said, here's your domain name and your existing website, put it back where it was. I don't have anything to do with it. But then she wanted the other domain name that we owned. And something I haven't put in the blog here, I actually found another equestrian company that wanted to take over that spot that she had. However, Sharon rang up these people and blew the shit out of them. It's warning them not to do that when it was none of her business. It was just amazing. So what else do we do? We see, so Sharon, yes, as I said, she just started ringing all my clients on a Saturday morning. I had 15 to 20 phone calls from different clients saying they just had this lady ring up complaining that she wasn't happy with my services. And they were fine, but they just said, I just thought I'd let you know, Danny. Most of my clients at the time, if not all of them, were extremely happy with the amount of marketing and how aggressive I were in my marketing techniques. So I couldn't stop her phoning my customers. And she was like just going through my whole database because everything's online. So I decided, I know what I'll do. I'll redirect the domain name she's talking about to a site selling adult products. And funny enough, that was the site that my wife used to look after. So I thought that would be a double whammy. Anyway, so when she's on the phone telling people to go to this website address and look what Danny's, he sent it off to this other new equestrian guy, it would actually go to an adult site. Well, not adult site, but, selling, I don't know, it was fleshlights if you want to know, do a search. However, I thought it was funny, and I thought this will stop her because she'll be so embarrassed she'll stop bringing up my clients. But no, this gave her more ammunition to feed the stuff guy. So Danny was sending her what she thought domain name traffic to somewhere it shouldn't really go. So what am I going on about now? Next to my blog. So this is what I was trying to explain when I was writing back to Roland, is it wasn't really anything to do with Sharon or equestrian, Canterbury equestrian, and I've got no problems with Sharon to this date at all. It was really about my ex-wife and her friend ganging up against me. And if you want to know the full story, I told him to give me a ring. My ex-wife thought that I was actually worth $2 million because at one stage in our business career, I said to my wife, for us to maintain the same lifestyle that the business gives us, we'd have to sell it for about at least $2 million to generate the same income that we would from the business. Because we had a very healthy business. I think 2004, my New Zealand's information network turned over just short of $500,000 worth of turnover in 1 year. And I thought that was pretty cool. And we was having a pretty good lifestyle. We lived out in the country. My wife had horses. I was a competitive target shooter. So I had my own indoor target shooting range. It was really cool. And I used to practice my shooting in the morning. And my wife used to practice running the horses around, which is really cool. So it was pretty lucky, you see. But in reality, when the ex-wife wanted a divorce, she thought I was worth $2 million. And I said, no, I'm not worth $2 million. I said, if I could find somebody to buy the business for $2 million, I'd be doing really well. And I said, you're more than welcome to give me $1 million for your half. Anyway, so we rushed out, got the business valued, and they come back and said, Danny, your business is worth $37,000. So I had to go back to the wife and say, well, the house is mortgaged to the hills. And by the way, the business that you think is worth $2 million, it's actually been valued at $37,000. And I'll give you $20,000 cash if you just walk away from the business, and we'll have to sell the house. So basically, me and we're both going to lose everything. So I just explained that in an email. What else have we got? I did explain to the guy at the stuff, if I were a really naughty boy, I would have hundreds of articles, well, not hundreds, but a lot of articles in the Stuff newspaper about my bad business practices. But obviously, this is more of a personal story, publicized. And the other thing he didn't know at the time, and I haven't put it in the article here, when my ex-wife, I said she could have everything that wasn't nailed down, and as long as I keep the business, she started selling my stuff on Trade Me, and that got really public. We got in the it was terrible. About 10 of these auctions were absolutely amazing, selling all my motorbike gear and my punching bags and my gloves and the whole 9 yards, and we got tons of publicity. So I didn't need that. Next thing, I've got this article going in Stuff newspaper, and I've had enough. I had within 24 hours of my wife, which I was quite happy with at the time, telling me she wants a divorce, I got really sick and I was sore all over, and I finished up having an appendix problem, and at 3 o'clock in the morning it burst on the operating table, and I finished up spending 2 weeks fighting for my life. I lost 9 kgs in a week. I was not in a good place. And at this time, I've got my wife coming up with a cunning plan to keep the house in the country that she loved. And it was just a real messy time. And then I had this, then we finished up coming up with an agreement. And the agreement was I would give her 20 grand for the business that I started, and she can have everything that wasn't nailed down on the house except my personal gear, and we'd go our own merry way. Once we agreed on that, next thing is my wife's in the ear of all these other people. And unfortunately, Sharon was one of those people. So to help and support my wife at the time, she thought she'd start giving me a hard time in business. And it was obviously being channeled or directed from the ex-wife that hated me. So it was just a terrible time. As I said, New Zealand Information Network was a really pride and joy of mine. It was a beautiful thing to do. I sold everything I owned. I bought a laptop. I got a digital camera. I hitchhiked around New Zealand, and I used to turn up in places like Franz Joseph, where else, Waitomo, go down the Haas, Wanaka, anywhere I wanted to be, I'd travel around. I used to continuously just about travel around New Zealand, and I built up this beautiful network of websites called New Zealand's Information Network. And then when I made a lot of money, we sold our 2 inner city apartments, and we bought some land, built a house, and we worked from satellite. So we got horses, then we never went anywhere. We never traveled anymore. It was kind of like trapped to the property. Anyone with horses will know exactly what I mean. It was a great time in life, no regrets. However, then we started looking for different types of clientele. So I was looking around us, who we were working with, our friends, and hence why I took on a Canterbury equestrian person. So it was quite cool. So my whole story, I think, is a good Kiwiana story, and I was trying to express that in an email to roeland.vandenbergh. he came back and he said, he talked about a lot about the Sharon Jones story, and he said it was more of an educational piece. He said that's what we turned it into, and it was more educating people to be careful when they're setting up their website and make sure that they know completely who owns their domain names. And I'm thinking, well, I did that. I did. I gave her a contract. I gave her an agreement and a letter of understanding, and I did all that thing, but she didn't listen, or she assumed, or she thought. But I did do the proper thing. So it wasn't a letter of the poor customer. It was a poor website developer guy who's getting blamed for things he didn't done with his ex-wife behind him getting on it. So anyway, so after that, they said basically any information I supplied would not result in any change to the article. So that's after my first email reply, basically said, we got it right, out of the bag, we're not changing anything. So then I wrote him another one. I said, and this one's pretty heartfelt and it's pretty raw. I'll read most of it. You go to my blog if you want to read a lot of it. I said, do you know people like me find it hard to live? I always have to prove myself. I left school at the age of 14. I had nothing going for me. I used to get beaten up by the school bullies, which I did. So my first job was walking around the neighborhood, and I was asking my neighbors if they'd be interested in hiring me. And they'd say, what do you do? And I said, I have a lawn mowing business. And they'd say, and I asked them, would you be interested in hiring me? And they'd say, how much do you charge? And I'd say, oh, $10 an hour. And they would agree to hire me to mow their lawns. And I said, we could do it on a weekly basis, or fortnightly if you like. And they'd say, that sounds great. And then I'd say, can I use your lawnmower? And I built up a little bit of a gardening business. I used to do lawns. I used to dig people's gardens. I used to empty the leaves out of people's spoutings. I even had 2 millionaires, the Andersons, and I used to sweep their drive every Thursday morning for 2 hours to get the leaves of it. And I reckon they were just supporting me. And they both used to drive off in the morning in 2 Mercedes with the wheels squealing. It was quite cool. So, and the other thing I explained, because this last part of my email got quite personal. I said, look, I live life. I was a Jehovah's Witness, and if you know anything about the Jehovah's Witness, it's like a cult. And by the age of 23, I met this lovely girl, did naughty things that you weren't allowed to do. So they kicked me out of the religion, and I had to start my life from scratch. So that means every friend that I had when I was growing up, I had to cut ties with them. I had no friends. So at the age of 23, I'm throwing out what we call the world, and I had to start my life from scratch. At the age of 23, I actually started to work for myself, and I had a business partner. We had a painting and decorating business. It was really, really cool. But my business partner was a Jehovah's Witness, so I didn't feel right staying in that business. And so I forfeited the business and walked away from that. So I literally had nothing. And that's when I sold everything I owned to buy a laptop. And I bought an 11-inch compact laptop, color screen, and also went into Nelson. I remember buying a Fujifilm digital camera. And I just recently upgraded my camera, and a guy had one, and he gave it to me as a gift. This is the camera I paid, I think, $1,200 for. It was brilliant. So if you go and watch my video, you'll see that camera. All right. So anyway, when I left I was a painter and a decorator for 10 years. I worked for myself for 3 years. When I left my boss of 7 years, he gave me a digital diary, and I'd finally found a way to remember information, because being dyslexic, it goes in one ear and out the other. That's why technology has really helped me in business life. And now I teach people how to use technology to make themselves more productive. And that's kind of what I do. So toheck.com is all about tuition, workshops, and helping people, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, and back in 1995, I did have a computer, and I tried to upgrade it to Windows 95 that had just come out. And it was really hard. So at that time, I thought, if I found it really hard to upgrade this, I'll now offer my services, just like I did with the lawn mowing business, to people who are also finding it hard. And then I will install Windows 95 on their computer. But that led to people asking me how to get on the internet and the like. So I explained this in my email. So some of my clients, which I was proud to have, Jason Gunn, Richard Hadley, James Daniels, if you know him. And they actually looked up to me for advice on how to get onto the internet. And it was a great time back then, because it really was grassroots stuff. And I said, I have had one hell of a hard life trying to make a success of myself. I'm always proving that I'm not stupid. I made enough money to prove I wasn't stupid. I did that with New Zealand's information network. I got married. 4 years later, my wife decided she wanted a divorce, and I'm happy with that. I would thank her if I got a chance to. It was a real shock, but you get on with it, don't you? I remember saying to her once, we're so lucky to be able to live in the country and live the lifestyle we have. If we wanted to maintain it, we'd obviously have to sell the business for $2 million, which I've already talked about. After I showed her our finances and explained to her some home truths about our finances, she realized that she was going to lose her horsey property. Now, at that time, which I haven't told you, I was a competitive target shooter. I'm not an expert, but I was pretty good at it. I was good enough to actually represent New Zealand at the Australian Nationals, which was really nice. And at that time, my wife decided to accuse me of threatening to shoot and kill her. Now, I used to hang out with about 1,500 target shooters at the time, and it happens quite a lot. Now, what that means is the wife goes to the police. Oh, I've got to go to my lawyer, and this guy has threatened to shoot and kill me, and they'll take an affidavit. And then the police come around and say, look, we've had this accusation against you, that and we have to take your rifles off you. And I'm going, what? And I've already signed up, and I'm going over to Australia to shoot for New Zealand. So I went and argued this in court, and I actually had an 8-page affidavit from my wife, and I had my reply to it. And she was actually a really nice looking judge, just saying, lovely lady. And she said, Mr. DeHeck, I have read your affidavits, and I've read your ex-wife's affidavits, and I honestly don't feel you're a threat to anybody. Have your rifles back and shoot well for New Zealand. Gave me the thumbs up. So that was a bit of a, and then before my wife decided to go through it, she dropped all the charges, and I spent thousands of dollars in with lawyers. And at the end of it, at that time, I basically lost everything. And I remember walking out of the lawyer's office with $5 in my back pocket. And my wife was still going after me to ruin my business. And that's why it really upset me with the Sharon thing, because it wasn't true. She wasn't happy. And at the end of the day, I've gone through all this stuff, and I've still got people trying to tarnish my business. I'm just going to leave me alone. I just want to get on with it. So then I said to him, I wrote a really long letter. I thought, if he's going to have any empathy at all, I'll tell him my whole story. I'll spend the time. This has taken me friggin' 5 hours to write this email. Hopefully he reads it. And as poorly as it was written, he says, Roland, can you imagine living life with a reading level of a 9.3-year-old? Constantly defending my actions. I said, I'm like a blind man in a room trying to find the exit. That's what it's like living life with dyslexia. At the age of 7, I told him, my stepfather committed suicide. I said, I watched my sister spiral down in life. She was a drug user, and at one point we found out she was trying to smother her children. She eventually hung herself on 15-minute suicide watch in Sunnyside Hospital in Christchurch. I've got a half-brother that's 9 years older than me, and he doesn't talk to me because he's still one of the Jehovah's Witnesses. I have a beautiful 77-year-old mother who doesn't talk to me because I'm no part of the religion. I said I went through the school system. I used to get beaten up by the bullies just about every week. I said every week some person was trying to hammer my face or body. And I used to fear going to school. I hated it. That's why I left at 14, not just because of the dyslexia. I said, now, my ex-wife, which is no longer in my life, managed to get her friends to write about me. It's something that isn't true. There's some facts to it, but it's not true. It's not me. For some reason, the stuff feel justified keeping their article on their website. It doesn't help me in any form. Or them, I don't think. As I said previously, I don't have any secrets. As you can read, this is pretty raw stuff. I've published it. It's my personal life. It's on the internet. I'm not having any secrets. I said, I'm not going to judge you or your action. But if you want to show a little bit of compassion to somebody, then why not remove an article that means nothing to you? I never have had my hand out for anything, and I think you've probably picked that up by now. Never have asked for any favors. But for goodness sake, would you leave an article on the internet that makes somebody feel like their life's not worth living, which is pretty strong. I said, your article cuts like a knife. I don't know why my words don't seem to have any impact. Has the world really got that sad that we can't find goodness? Does it really make a difference? Does it really matter? Just imagine putting yourself in my shoes and reading an article that vindicates someone that you are not. If you want to know about me, or if you really care, 10 years ago, I said I was incredibly lonely, and there was a lot of lonely people out there. So I started doing some positive stuff in the community. I started organizing social groups. I used to get people together, and I was doing good things in the community. And I said, isn't that what it's all about? I put together a group of social butterflies, and I used to organize events, hiking, biking, and lots of social networking dinners, I used to call them. I've done a lot of good in the community, but every time I have a look at this article, it's negative. The only thing that you can find on the internet about me that isn't totally that is untrue, and it's not fair to slander me. That's my over. So it's maybe it's not the done thing. This is what I've said. Maybe it's not the done thing in your industry. Why does anyone ever publish? Why doesn't anyone? Sorry, I'm getting a bit there. So I said, maybe it's not the done thing in your industry. Why doesn't anyone ever publicize good stuff that I've done? If you do a search on Danny the Heck, you won't find bad stuff. You'll just find one article from a lady that was pissed off about the reaction she got from me when she was trying to act like a bully. So she's got what she's wanted. I got threatened like shit at school, and this lady thought she could use the same tactics and bully me. The bullies win once again. Sorry, it's a bit of a waffle. Read it if you want to. So then I've tried at the end, and I've said to him, right now in my life, I'd really value having this article removed. It's not true. It's not factual. And at the end of the day, it's one person's opinion over another. I'm sure you get many requests from people like me, or maybe not quite like me. I said, I'm not a criminal. I'm not a bad person. And it looks like you are judge and executioner. And then I said, is it really worth the risk that it makes me feel about myself and my life? Is my life really worthwhile? Does it make you feel good that you've done the right thing? Can you appreciate your words cut like a knife? Is it going to make a difference to the newspaper? Is it going to make a difference to anyone in the Stuff newspaper, whether they remove an article that is 10 years ago? Whether it's 10 years ago or recent, what's the difference? What's the point of it? It's just negative shit on the internet. And it's got my name attached to it. I don't want to teach people about making sure they've got their domain names in their name and make sure who owns what. I did that. I've done the right thing, but it looks like... Anyway, so I got another reply from roeland.vandenbergh, and it says, we're not going to do anything about removing the article, and if you're struggling in life, get some help. Thanks, mate. You're a real winner. And that's nice that you really care, mate. You didn't even bother to ring me. You don't really care. And I've spent 5 or 6 hours writing an email, and that's the reply I get. So my last comments in this blog and in this podcast or this YouTube video is, it basically said, yes, that email I wrote to a perfect stranger. I don't know Roland at all. You might have drawn a conclusion about him, just like people who are reading about Danny the Heck will read that article and they draw a conclusion about me. So yes, it was pretty raw. However, I was honest, I was upfront, I don't have any secrets. However, if roeland.vandenbergh reads between the lines, he must have thought it was worth taking the gamble or risk of upsetting someone's mental health for a few words on the website that are 10 years old. And I think it is appalling, and I do. Personally, I don't think the article is too bad. I don't think it's shocking, but people read it negatively. And if you know my nature, I don't do passive marketing, so I really push marketing out there. I get the results, and this is why I have lots of satisfied clients. especially at that time. My point is, how come newspapers can judge, jury, and execute? What gives them the right to get somebody's reputation and their name? I have as much rights as you guys. This is definitely harm my business if that's what you're trying to accomplish. So every time you publish an article and get some traction, you feel justified that you can ruin somebody's life or upset their business, and you think that's a justified action, then I definitely don't ever want to be a reporter. And when you feel like you've got your typewriter or your pen and you're writing your articles and you're thinking that you've got the right to say this or that, then get off your high horse. Why not show some, anyway, I'm getting carried away. So I said, roeland.vandenbergh, you may not want to do business with him. You may not want to do business with him because he lacks empathy and kindness, and he doesn't embrace change. He's quite adamant that that Stuff have a non-removal policy. I want to ask you, why don't newspapers publish good stories? Why don't they find the good things I've done in my career and write stories about them? Why do you look for bad, and why do you want to tarnish people's? I know this is like David and Goliath when I'm talking about taking on the Stuff newspaper. I'm not working out of an air-conditioned office in Wellington. I'm pretty streetwise. I've embraced change, and I have to rely on my reputation, which is pretty good to survive. One article does make a difference. Stuff policy, by removing content, your Stuff policy on removing content, we can basically go along and get stuffed. That's my take. So I hope you enjoyed my podcast. I know it's a bit intense. It's personalized. I'm not making excuses for anything I've done. But here's my opportunity to show that I do also have a presence on the internet. And I challenge you to do a little bit of searching on roeland.vandenbergh. And if you are like me, lucky enough to get in the Stuff newspaper, you'll be there for life, because they have a policy of keeping their information on the internet, because they don't give a stuff about you and your business. They lack empathy, and they don't have much heartfeltness for people, even Kiwis. They just want a lot of traffic to their websites so they can keep in the air-conditioned offices. So that's my rant today. I hope you've enjoyed my podcast, and by all means subscribe to my podcast if you want to hear more rambles. This one's quite a personal one. I only do one personal one like this every 40 or so podcasts. So hope you enjoyed it, and I'm Danny de Heck. I look forward to hearing your comments. Have a great day.